Ethan had just turned 18, a young man now, taller than me, his shoulders squared with quiet confidence. Sometimes, when I looked at him, I saw flashes of the little boy he used to be, full of mischief and charm. That familiar charm returned one winter afternoon when he leaned against the kitchen counter and said, "Mom, let's rent an RV and head to the mountains for a week. Just you and me. Fresh air, snowy trails, a warm fire. What do you say?" His smile held that old boyish spark, but there was something deeper this time. I hesitated, but after the exhausting holiday season and the never-ending grind of work, the idea of disappearing into the mountains felt like a gift. So, we packed light. Warm clothes, a couple of books, and some old board games. Ethan handled the big things. He booked the RV, mapped the route, and even made a playlist for the drive. As we drove into the mountains, the city faded away, replaced by towering pines dusted with snow. The road curved through a quiet, frozen world that looked like a painting. By the time we reached a small RV park tucked into a secluded valley in Colorado, the sky was melting into soft shades of gold and lavender. The air was crisp and still. I stood outside the RV, taking a deep breath. For the first time in a long while, the weight I'd been carrying felt lighter. The days settled into a simple, peaceful rhythm. Mornings started with quiet hikes through snow-blanketed woods, the only sound our boots crunching on the frozen ground. Ethan led the way confidently, and though I struggled to keep up, I enjoyed every second of it. At midday, we warmed our hands around mugs of cocoa and ate simple meals while the heater hummed. Nights were my favorite. We sat by the fire, bundled in blankets, and watched the flames dance as the cold wind whispered through the trees. One night, Ethan opened up in a way he hadn't in years. Sitting close to the fire, his face lit by the flickering glow, he spoke softly about his fears for the future, about college, and how lost he sometimes felt. I listened, really listened. And for the first time, I saw not just my son, but a young man trying to find his place in the world. Somewhere between his words, I realized how little I had leaned on him since his father and I divorced. I had spent years being strong, forgetting he was quietly becoming someone I could lean on too. Later that evening, after a long hike left us red-cheeked and exhausted, we returned to the RV. Ethan insisted on cooking dinner, a simple pasta dish that tasted far better than it should have. As we ate under the soft glow of the small overhead lamp, I found myself smiling at him, warmth blooming in my chest. "Thanks for this, Ollie," I said, using the old nickname I hadn't spoken in years. This was a great idea. His blue eyes met mine, and for a moment, something unspoken passed between us. "Mom," he said gently, his voice low and sincere, "I've missed this. Just being with you. It feels like life got so busy we forgot how to really talk." His words settled over me like a warm blanket. That night, as snow fell softly outside, we stayed inside the tiny RV, cocooned in warmth and quiet. Ethan read by the window while I sat nearby, watching the snow blanket the earth in peaceful silence. In that moment, surrounded by nothing but the mountains and the soft rhythm of our breathing, I felt a gratitude deeper than words, for the boy he had been, for the man he was becoming, and for the time we had found again. The next morning, I woke to the rich, familiar scent of fresh coffee. My body ached from the hike, but the warmth of the blankets and the soft hum of the heater made it bearable. "Morning, sleepyhead," Ethan called from the kitchenette, his voice teasing and lighthearted. I sat up slowly, rubbing my eyes. "What's this? Room service now?" He turned around with that easy grin, holding out a steaming mug. "Hey, you earned it. Best hiking partner I've had. Though you did sound like you were dying on that last hill." I laughed and took the mug, savoring the perfect balance of cream and sugar. He'd made it exactly how I liked it. Outside, snow continued to fall in thick, lazy flakes. Inside, the RV felt like our own little world. "Want to check out that trail I mentioned yesterday?" Ethan asked after breakfast. Despite my sore muscles, I agreed. We layered up and stepped back into the frozen quiet. The woods untouched, and glistening under fresh snow. The trail wound through a forest of towering pines. The only sounds were the crunch of snow beneath our boots and Ethan's easy jokes. "You know," he teased, brushing frost from my hat. "With that look, you could star in a survival movie. Maybe Frozen Wilderness, Mom Edition." I rolled my eyes and swatted at him playfully, his laughter echoing through the trees. But the playful mood didn't last. On the way back, as the sun dipped low and the snow turned to ice under our feet, I slipped. One wrong step and I was down hard, pain shooting up my leg. "Mom!" Ethan was by my side instantly, his hands steady, his eyes filled with worry. "It's nothing," I tried to say, but the pain flared again as I moved. Without a word, he knelt and lifted me into his arms, as if I weighed nothing. "That's it. You're done walking today," he said firmly, his breath warm against the cold air. "Ethan, really, I'm fine." He shot me a look, soft but unrelenting. "No arguments. I'm not risking this getting worse." Then, with a half smile, he added, "Besides, I've been working out for exactly this kind of emergency." Even through the pain, I managed a small laugh. When we got back to the RV, Ethan settled me gently onto the couch, propped my leg up, and wrapped it in an ice pack. He knelt beside me, his forehead creased with concern. "We'll head home tomorrow," he said quietly. "Tonight, just rest. Whatever you need, I'm here." That night, the pain kept me from sleeping. Sometime after midnight, chills took over, and I realized with dread that I was running a fever. I barely had the strength to call his name. "Ethan." He was there in seconds, his hand pressed gently to my forehead. "You're burning up," he muttered, his voice tight with worry. Before I could protest, he climbed into the narrow bed next to me, pulled me close, and wrapped the blankets tightly around us. "You need to warm up," he whispered, his arms solid and warm around me. I rested my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Slowly, the chills began to fade. "Thank you," I murmured sleepily. "Always," he whispered, pressing a soft kiss to my hair. "I'll always take care of you." And for the first time in what felt like forever, I believed that. The next morning, the fever had eased, but my body felt heavy and weak. From the couch, I could hear the faint clatter of dishes and the low hum of Ethan's voice as he moved around the RV's tiny kitchen. When I managed to sit up, he turned and smiled, holding out a fresh mug of coffee. "Good morning," he said. "How's my favorite hiking partner?" "Sore," I admitted, wincing as I shifted my leg. "Well, today you're off duty," he declared. "Breakfast in bed, and after that, we're heading home. Hospital first stop, no arguments." I gave him a weak smile, too tired to put up a fight. Truthfully, I was grateful for how he had taken over everything so effortlessly. After breakfast, he packed up our things, every movement careful and efficient. When it was time to go, he helped me into the truck like I was something fragile, his hand never leaving mine as he made sure I was comfortable. The drive down the mountain was slow and quiet. The snowy landscape drifted by like a silent dream, but all I could focus on was the way Ethan kept glancing over at me, adjusting the heat, making sure I had water, gently brushing my hair back when it fell into my face. At the hospital, he stayed close, one arm wrapped protectively around my shoulders as the doctor examined my leg. "It's just a sprain," the doctor reassured. "Keep it elevated, rest, and take it easy for a few days." Ethan let out a breath he'd clearly been holding and gave me a relieved grin. "See? Nothing too bad, but you're still on couch duty." By the time we got home, I was exhausted. Ethan helped me to the couch, tucked blankets around me, and made a fresh pot of tea. "You don't have to wait on me like this," I told him as he brought me the remote and settled a pillow under my leg. He smiled and shook his head. "I want to. You've spent so long taking care of everyone else. It's your turn." That night, as the house grew quiet and the lights dimmed, we sat together on the couch again. The TV played a movie neither of us really watched. For the longest time, we just sat there in silence, the space between us feeling smaller and smaller. Then, out of nowhere, Ethan spoke. "Mom," he said softly, his voice lower than I'd ever heard it. I turned toward him, sensing something heavy behind his words. I've been thinking a lot about us, about how different things feel lately. My heart picked up its pace. Different how? I asked cautiously. He took a slow breath, his eyes never leaving mine. I care about you, not just as my mom. It's more than that. I've never felt this way about anyone before. The air between us grew thick, and I could feel my pulse in my ears. Ethan, I whispered, but my voice broke, unsure how to respond. He raised his hand gently, a sad smile tugging at his lips. You don't have to say anything. I couldn't keep it in anymore. I reached out, my fingers trembling as I took his hand in mine. You mean everything to me, Ethan, I whispered, my eyes stinging with tears, more than I could ever explain. And in that quiet moment, nothing else seemed to matter. Without thinking, I pulled him into a tight embrace. His arms wrapped around me instantly, strong and safe, and for the first time in years, I let myself fully lean into someone else's care. In that fragile silence, with the weight of years between us melting away, I knew we had crossed a line we couldn't uncross. But for now, it felt exactly right. The days that followed felt both delicate and unshakable, like we were walking a tightrope neither of us dared to name. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt natural, even peaceful. Ethan continued caring for me in ways I hadn't experienced in years. He helped me to the kitchen, his touch careful but lingering. When we sat together on the couch, his arm settled easily around my shoulders as if it belonged there. At night, we found comfort in quiet moments, the TV casting soft shadows while we sat close, sharing the same blanket. Words became less important. A glance, a touch, a quiet laugh, they spoke more than conversations ever could. One evening, as the last light faded from the sky and the house sat wrapped in twilight, Ethan broke the silence. Mom, do you ever think about what it'd be like if it was just us? His voice was soft, but heavy with meaning. I turned to him, my heart thudding painfully in my chest. What do you mean? I asked cautiously. He hesitated, fingers lightly tracing the edge of the blanket between us. No one else to worry about, no expectations, just this. You and me, taking care of each other, always. His words hung in the air, vulnerable and fragile. I swallowed hard. That sounds peaceful, I admitted. But life's more complicated than that, Ethan. You know it is. He nodded, his cheek brushing gently against mine. I know. But sometimes I wish it could be that simple. A deep, aching part of me wished the same thing. I reached over, threading my fingers through his, grounding myself in the warmth of his hand. No matter what happens, we'll figure things out, I whispered. Together. He turned toward me then, his expression completely open. I've never loved anyone like I love you, he admitted, his voice barely audible but filled with emotion. The walls I'd carefully built around my heart trembled under the weight of those words. Without hesitation, I leaned in and held him close, my head against his chest, his arms wrapped tightly around me, his steady heartbeat loud in my ears. In that moment, nothing outside of that embrace mattered. Not the past, not the future. Just us. As the night wore on, we didn't move. The world faded away, and for the first time in years, I felt completely safe, completely loved. The days after that quiet night felt different, not in a loud or obvious way, but like something inside us had gently shifted. Ethan didn't bring it up again, and neither did I. But there was a softness in how we moved around each other. When he helped me out of bed, his hand lingered. When we sat on the couch, our bodies leaned into each other more naturally, like they were meant to. There was no fear, only warmth. One afternoon, as I was flipping channels, Ethan came in with a blanket and draped it over my legs. He sat down beside me without a word, his fingers brushing mine before resting on the couch. I looked at him and smiled. You've really stepped up, you know. He turned toward me, the corners of his mouth lifting slightly. You've always taken care of me. I guess it was my turn. His voice held something else, something deeper, and I felt it in my chest. That night, as we shared dinner in the quiet living room, he glanced over at me, his voice gentle. This feels right, doesn't it? I looked at him, searching for the right words. It does, I said softly. More than I expected. We watched a movie together, neither of us really paying attention. Our hands found each other under the blanket. It wasn't planned, it just happened. As the credits rolled and the room dimmed, Ethan turned to me. His face was soft, his eyes full of something that felt like hope and hesitation at the same time. I know we don't talk about it, he said quietly, but I feel it. Every day. I nodded, heart tight. Me too. And with that, he leaned in and rested his forehead against mine, breathing me in like he needed the moment to last. We didn't say anything more that night. We didn't need to. The final night settled over us gently, like the world itself was holding its breath. Outside, a light drizzle replaced the snow, the rhythmic tapping against the windows blending with the soft hum of the heater. We didn't turn on the TV that night. It felt unnecessary, like words and distractions were too heavy for the delicate space we were in. Instead, we sat together in silence, the dim lamp casting a soft halo over the living room. Ethan sat close beside me, his arm resting along the back of the couch, his fingertips lightly brushing my shoulder now and then, as if to remind himself I was really there. After a long stretch of quiet, his voice broke through, low and unsteady. Do you ever wonder what it'd be like if we just stopped worrying about everything else? His thumb traced slow circles against my shoulder. If it was just us, the way it's been these last few days, simple, quiet, ours. I turned to him, seeing the weight behind his words. His eyes were soft, but filled with longing, and beneath that, a quiet kind of fear. I think about it, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper, more than I want to. His lips curled into a faint, almost sad smile. I keep thinking this has to end, that you'll wake up tomorrow and want things to go back to how they were. But I don't want that. I don't think I can go back to pretending this isn't real. The vulnerability in his voice broke something open inside me. I reached for his hand, threading my fingers through his, and felt the quiet tremble there. You're not the only one afraid, I whispered. But we don't have to figure it all out right now. Let's just stay here, in this moment, together. He leaned in then, his forehead resting against mine, and for the first time, there was no hesitation. I love you, he breathed. The words were raw, unguarded, like they'd lived inside him for longer than even he realized. Tears welled up in my eyes as my heart answered before my voice did. I love you too, Ethan. More than I've ever been able to say out loud. He closed his eyes, a soft exhale leaving his lips as his arms wrapped gently around me. There was no urgency, no rush, just the quiet comfort of being held by someone who saw every part of you and stayed anyway. We lay like that for hours, neither of us ready to break the fragile magic of the moment. At some point in the night, as the rain outside slowed to a whisper, he shifted, carefully pulling the blankets tighter around us. His voice came again, softer this time, spoken more to the dark than to me. Whatever happens next, I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose you. I pressed my head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart under my cheek. You won't, I promised. We'll face whatever comes, together. And as his hand found mine beneath the blankets, as the night stretched on and the future remained uncertain, there was only one thing I knew for sure. Love, in whatever shape it took, had found its way back to me. And for the first time in a long, long while, that was enough.